I do too. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Pinal County Community College District regular meeting. And if Governing Board Member Ruth Smith, if you could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you and welcome everyone. So the first item on our agenda is the election of Governing Board Member Dan Miller resigned a few months ago. He held that role, and now that we haven't had one, has been advised to us that it would probably be a good idea, although this role will only be for today and through December, because in January we'll redo yet again. So, is there a motion on the floor to nominate one of our governing board members as Vice President and Secretary for a couple of months?
Madam President, I would like to nominate Dr. Odion.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to
Who? I didn't hear.
Dr. Odiorn as Vice President for a couple of months. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, is there any other discussion? If not, all those in favor of electing Dr. Odiorn as our Vice President and Secretary, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Odiorn, for stepping into this. All right.
Most welcome.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So made.
All right, I think that was Governing Board Member Walker, and is there a second?
Second.
All right, Dr. Odiorn, any other discussion? All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, agenda is adopted as presented. So next item on the agenda is a call to the public. Do we have any? Nothing. Thank you, Angela. We do not have any public that wants to speak. All right, now we're going to move into the action items. The first, of course, is the consideration of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So move.
Is there a second?
I'll
All right. Mary Lou, I'll have you make that call. Who you heard. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Governing Board, and all those that put that together. We are now at item 7, reports from Dr. Elliott, district update.
Good afternoon, Governing Board members, President Kasuga, faculty, staff, and guests. We're a report-heavy laden meeting today, so I apologize up front, but I would like to give you a few district updates first. We have obviously an official received final approval for the post-baccalaureate K through 8 program, which will lead to a teaching certificate with the state of Arizona for those who already hold a bachelor's degree, and enrollment is now open for the program, so we're really proud that we were able to launch that. It took some time, but what a great benefit for the state of Arizona and Pinal County. We are currently in discussions and negotiations with a company named Unmanned Safety Institute for a partnership to deliver drone pilot training. They have been providing training for the past year at our Maricopa campus, and we want to formalize that through the partnership. It would make the Maricopa campus their West Coast headquarters, and if you look them up, they're pretty large-scale organization. The training leads to FFA licensing in drone piloting, and if you're familiar, drones are used a lot now with almost everything. And the Institute partners with several universities, including Embry-Riddle, and we would be the first community college to partner with them for the Institute. So we think it's an excellent fit for the Maricopa campus, and We're excited about that. We're also in discussions with PSV Trucking. They want to lease some space at the Signal Peak campus to provide CDL training, which is awesome because we won't have to carry the cost or the liability, but our learners would have access to CDL training, and we think this is a great partnership. It also allow our heavy equipment operator learners to participate and get their CDL, which many employers want for our heavy operating equipment. That's a lot. And then I want to just remind you about the annual Vaquero Awards event. It's going to be Saturday, November 19th here at Signal Peak campus. A lot of people in this room have been working really hard putting that together. Not to overlook our new Director of Institutional Development, Craig Kurtz, if you would please stand up and say hello to the board. Obviously, he's leading those efforts and had to hit the ground running preparing that event. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
That's a lot of good stuff.
I think,
Really good stuff.
yeah, I think these two potential partnerships are really potentially the future of higher education. And again, we won't have to find the faculty. We won't have to carry the expense or the liability, but learners will have access to these opportunities. And it's very exciting for us.
Yeah, any other questions or comments for Dr. Elliott? It's been an outstanding report of what's going on with CAC and all of that programming and accessibility. Okay, great. Congratulations. All right. Moving on to item 8, Business Affairs Report. Mr. Watka, you have a lot on here.
Lucky me.
Lucky you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Madam Chair, governing board members, Madam President, Madam Executive Assistant, and colleagues and guests here today. 4 reports for my part of the agenda. First report is going to be a financial audit presentation for fiscal year 21. I know just a few months ago we had a presentation on fiscal year 20. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to join that one. I was out of town. But we are presenting 21. As you know, we've mentioned in the past, we're a little behind on the audits, but the good news is that we were expected to finish the 21 audit by September 30th. And with the good work of Louisa Ott, my executive director, and her staff, we were able to meet that deadline. Of course, also working with our great auditors who are going to present shortly. So that just leaves us 1 year, meaning the year that just ended, June 30th of 22. Our deadline to get that is now March 31st in the new calendar year, and we do plan, right, ladies? We do plan on meeting that deadline, and then when June 30th rolls around to next year, we should be on pace for fiscal year 23 moving forward. So it's been a challenge, and I appreciate everybody's patience and understanding with that. So this afternoon, we'd like to present the fiscal year 21 audit. I'd like to introduce Kathleen from the auditor's office, and she will present and introduce her staff.
Thank you. Do we have a presentation? Oh, we do. Okay. Madam President, Dr. Elliott, can you hear me okay? Board members, good afternoon. My name is Kathleen Wood. I'm with the Arizona Auditor General. I'm with the Assurance and Quality Control Group. And joining me today is Nicole Bartlett over here, and she's the one who runs the district's audits. I was on the audit many years ago. We were just talking about this, and I think I've met a couple of you maybe. Good to see you again. Thank you for inviting us to present the audit. As Chris mentioned, we will be presenting the results and audit findings for the fiscal year 21 audit of the district. And as Chris mentioned, we just were here in June to present the 2020 audit results. And are pleased to be here again to present the 21 audit. And I just want to say congratulations to Mr. Watka, Louisa. and you, all your staff, for issuing the 21 report so shortly after the 22 report, or 20 report. It's really an undertaking to issue reports that soon after each other to get caught up. And, we really value the cooperation of the district's management and staff with the audit. We have a very good positive relationship working with you, and we look forward to doing that again for the 22 audit, which Chris mentioned will be issued on time, March 31st. So we look forward to that. Before we begin, we wanted to give you a little bit of background on our office. The Arizona Auditor General is a legislative office, and we are full of nonpartisan staff. And we are an independent source of information, and we are impartial concerning our audits. We provide specific recommendations to the state and local governments we audit to improve their operations and programs that they run. We're well-versed and knowledgeable about the auditing standards and the government auditing standards, which are issued by the U.S. Comptroller General, are standards that we follow, and those have higher standards for us as professionals to be qualified to do our work. They also require us to be independent, objective, have integrity, use professional judgment. They also require us to have audit evidence to support our findings, and they require us to have a quality control system over our audit process so we can issue quality audits. And so all federal, state, and government auditors follow these standards. And I mentioned we are a legislative agency. We report to all 60 members of the legislature. And we directly report to a group called JLAC, the Joint Legislative Audit Committee. That is comprised of 10 legislators. 5 are appointed by the state Senate president, and then 5 are appointed by the House Speaker. And I just wanted to remind everyone, the reason we're here, as you recall last year, some laws became effective requiring the board to invite us to the meeting to discuss annually the audit results and findings that we had. And we actually think that's a really good opportunity for us to communicate directly with you and provide you an opportunity to ask us any questions you have about our work or about the audit. As I mentioned, we recently completed the district's 2021 audit that was issued in September. With that financial statement audit is also a federal compliance audit or a single audit. So we will be covering those momentarily. I would like to let you know of some things that govern our work first. I mentioned some standards that we have to follow. And as you know, state and federal laws require you to have an annual financial statement audit and an annual federal compliance audit or single audit each year. And those requirements require us to follow standards. There's 3 sets. Let me get the slide advanced here. The first set of standards is put out by the American Institute of CPAs, and these are standards that any CPA firm follows for private companies' financial statement audits, for example. So we follow these. We follow the government auditing standards that I just mentioned that are kind of on top of those. Those require us to do additional things. They require us to look at your internal control and compliance over how you do financial reporting, over how you administer federal grant programs, for example. So we have that additional reporting requirement. And then the last set of standards is federal. When we audit your federal grant programs, the Single Audit Act and the Federal Uniform Guidance direct our work on what we need to do to audit your federal programs. So all of these standards have a backbone that require us to be independent, objective, and have integrity when we're, conducting the audits. And so we have to follow them, conducting the audit and issuing the report we produce. So as we've done today or this year, and we will continue to do, is we will issue an email to you when we issue the reports, and we send you links to those reports, including the prior year's reports on our website of where you can find those. We also do a summary report highlights document that will summarize the audit results for you. So I'm going to go over the district's annual financial audit and single audit for the year ending June 30, 2021. To summarize those reports, the district's financial statement report contains the district's financial statements you prepare and our opinion on them. And our opinion that we issued, same as prior years, was unmodified or clean, which means your financial statements are reliable. For the federal compliance audit, that is a package that includes your financial statements as well as a schedule of your federal awards, which we also issue an opinion on, and that opinion was clean. We also report on internal control and compliance and include any findings and recommendations we have. And Nicole's going to go over that in more detail momentarily. All these are presented in one document for you, so hopefully that is easy for you to get through. But again, Nicole's going to cover the document that we put out for report highlights if you need a summary. One last thing before I introduce Nicole is just to let you know that the standards we follow require us to do certain communications with you. And I mentioned we issue an email once the reports are published. We also communicate with you via email when we start the audit. You get a copy of the engagement terms as well as when we complete the audit. And we cover certain elements of things that may have occurred during the audit. One is whether we have difficulties that we encounter on the audit. And just to recap this year's audit, we have had no difficulties, so that is good news. Other things I want to point out are the resources we have available on our website. You and your management group are welcome to get assistance from us anytime, but we have resources that are available there at arizonaauditor.gov. And we provide reporting guidelines for your financial statements, expenditure limitation report. We provide frequently asked questions, fraud alerts, sometimes information technology alerts, budget forms. So there's a lot of information. The user guide you might find helpful. That is a document that might help a busy individual like yourself to learn how to find quickly what you need in the audit report, since it can be quite large. So we welcome you to reach out to us if you need assistance. With no further ado, I'm going to introduce Nicole, and she's going to go over the audit results. And again, I just wanted to express our gratitude for having us here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Nicole, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you, Madam President, Dr. Elliott, board, faculty, and guests. I'm really excited to be back here so soon. It's been a long road with Lisa and Chris and their team, and so this is kind of coming to, a conclusion after years of work, as we've talked about. I'd like to go ahead and first go over the report highlights that Kathleen mentioned. This is a 2-page summary that we provide to you to help you give kind of a snapshot as to the district's largest primary revenue sources and how the district uses these monies over the last 10 years. They also provide a brief information over our key findings and recommendations. And then, as always, a short links to the current and prior year audit reports to help you navigate to those quickly. I wanted to point out that the district's 4 main sources of revenues consist of property taxes, government grants and contracts, tuition and fees, and state assistance. And then the primary expense purposes consist of instruction, institutional support, scholarships, and student services. District revenues were $23.7 million greater than its expenses, which increased the total net position to $174.5 million at June 30th, 2021. Net position includes all the assets, such as buildings, vehicles, cash and investments, less all liabilities, such as unpaid pension and other payroll obligations, long-term debt, and accounts payable. Of the total net position, $98.2 million is restricted by external parties or is not in spendable form. So the remaining $76.3 million is unrestricted. Next, I wanted to go ahead and discuss the district's progress on correcting the prior year audit findings that were brought forth in the June board meeting and the 2020 report, and then connect those to our current year findings that we had in our report to help you see how the district employees are doing at correcting those deficiencies. So the district fully corrected 2 prior year findings that were noted in the 2020 audit by issuing the district's single audit timely. The deadline was actually extended from the normal March 31st deadline to September 30th as a result of the pandemic. And then performing the required reconciliations of its federal direct student loan cash receipts and disbursements. They were able to provide us evidence over that, so we consider that finding fully corrected. The district partially corrected 3 prior year findings, and so these were actually repeated in the current year, but they have made progress on correcting them. First, the district was able to reduce the time in between its annual financial report issuance date by 5 months. A finding over the late issuance of the financial report was noted first in fiscal year 18 when the district implemented a new student system, and then in fiscal year 2019, when the district implemented a new accounting system, it caused further delays. So to provide you some perspective, the fiscal year 2018 audit was issued January 31st, 2020, which was 10 months later than state requires. The 2019 was issued June 17th, 21, which was 15 months later than state law requires. And then fiscal year 20 was issued April 25th, 2022, 13 months later than state law requires. And then fiscal year 21 issued 9/26/2022, which was only 6 months later than state law requires. So that's a really, really good timeline to show the progress. As Chris mentioned, the district's goal, and they're working with us to try and get their audit completely on time by March 31st, 2023 for the financial statements. The other thing that they are working on is implementing changes to its information technology control procedures that were noted in finding 2021-02. Although the district has made some improvements, we reported a current year finding because the district's control procedures were not sufficiently implemented. Part of this is due to the delay in the timing of audits. By the time they're able to correct something, it's already usually in the next fiscal year. One key recommendation is to make it a priority to implement the remaining IT policies and procedures and ensure the procedures are consistently followed. There are also additional recommendations noted in the report. And then the third partially corrected finding is regarding the accuracy and timeliness of reporting enrollment changes. In the fiscal year 2020 finding, we noted the district did not report student enrollment status changes to the National Student Loan Data System within the required time periods for 41 of 60 students we tested, and did not report the correct status change dates for 7 of 60 students we tested. However, during this year's audit, we noted only 9 of 60 that the district did not report in the required timeframe, and incorrect status changes for 12 of 60 students, so a larger reduction in the amount of deficiencies. I'll be discussing this current year finding in more detail shortly. And then there was one prior year finding that was not corrected, which was identified in the current year single audit report as finding 2021-103. This was mainly due to timing. Fiscal year 21 had passed before they could do any changes. So the district has reported that they've corrected this during the fiscal year 22, and we'll be following up on that in our current year's audit. With that finding, we recommend that the district should ensure that its student financial aid information risk assessment considers and documents the risks related to employee training and management and data disposal. And then if there is a risk identified, they have to implement a safeguard for those elements. And then I wanted to bring to your attention, because of the enrollment reporting finding that has been repeated every year, and the magnitude, we did issue a qualified opinion on student financial assistance program for the 21 audit. This was similar to the prior 2 audits. To correct this, we recommend that the district should report accurate student enrollment changes within 60 days and verify that the student enrollment status changes recorded in its student information system are accurate. And then this year, we did report a new finding. This was related to the return of Title IV funds calculations. And for 3 of 4 students we tested, we noted that either the calculation was not done correctly or was not reported. So we recommend that the district should accurately calculate, report, and return student financial assistance monies to the federal grantor in a timely manner, and develop and implement written policies and procedures to perform the reviews of students' return of Title IV calculations, and also designate employees to periodically review information reported for accuracy and timeliness. The district did report that they have resolved the money not submitted since our audit report. As a reminder, we have provided our audit reports to each board member, and you can also find them on our office's website. I wanted to thank Governing Board President Kasuga, the board, Dr. Elliott, faculty and staff for allowing us to present today. At this time, do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for Nicole or the team, the audit team? Doesn't look like it. Nicole, thank you
Okay.
again for joining us so soon.
Yeah.
I think we're getting back on the right track.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
thanks to the staff as well. Chris?
Thank you, auditors, much appreciated. Second report is going to be done by Cameron Sanders. He is a Chief Information Officer. And this is a new report we're starting. It is a requirement now that we have to present on a yearly basis to the board. This is a security program overview. Being the first year, this is going to be a little lengthy report. Subsequent years now will have just mainly updates or any changes that may occur to the law, but we thought it'd be worthwhile to spend extra time this first year since it's a first-time occurrence. So I'd like to introduce Cameron, who will present this security program overview.
Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon, Madam President, board members, Dr. Elliott, Mary Lou, and guests. And Chris gave a great summary as to what I'll be speaking to today, so I'll go ahead and hop into it. And please feel free to stop me if you have any questions as I go. So first up, one of our primary initiatives in the IT department as it relates to security was to create a brand new security architect position that's sole focus is to work on nothing but the cybersecurity of the institution. So we took an existing IT position, transitioned it to have this functionality, and I meet monthly with my fellow community college CIOs, and all but one now have a security focused position, and that last community college is working towards that end right now. So this lets you know the emphasis that there is on this role within institutions like ours. We also perform annual risks assessments here at the college of some of our major systems. And we do this at a general cybersecurity level with our cybersecurity insurance provider, the Trust. And then we also focus on 2 of our main anthology ERP systems, so our finance system and our student system. So we sit down in groups and we ask ourselves the questions, what could go wrong with our systems? How could they be penetrated? How could they be abused? So we identify those risks, and then we work through them and determine if we choose to accept, mitigate, take other action, and so on. So this is an annual occurrence for us to make sure that we are looking at any vulnerabilities that might be out there for some of our major systems and our overall cybersecurity stance we have here at the college. Another thing that we enacted was multi-factor authentication. So this is where, after you enter your username and password to get into our CAC systems, you're prompted to enter a secondary code that could be sent to you through text message or through a phone call. But this ensures that if someone out there got a hold of your username and password, they still would not be able to log in as you, because they would need to have your cell phone or your phone to be able to answer and enter that secondary code. So this was an important security component for us to further secure our systems. We've had this in place now for 2 years for our employees, and we're actually working to roll this out for our students next. During the pandemic, we also put in some new network monitoring tools that allow us to watch for traffic that's coming in from outside the college, so outside of our network, trying to penetrate. So we watch there at that perimeter to see if there's any malicious activity trying to come in. And we also watch to see if there are any pieces of software that were perhaps installed on CAC equipment here within the college. It could be a staff computer, and they will often then try to communicate back outside and call home to their site to perform some type of activity. So we have some new tools that watch for that and shut it down as soon as it's identified. We monitor all of our systems and ensure that we're applying upgrades and patches in a timely fashion. This goes all the way from our large-scale servers, so our big computers, down to our staff devices, ensuring that we've got the latest updates, including Windows and other software systems that we have. So this is an important piece to make sure that we catch any vulnerabilities and block them in a timely fashion. And also during the pandemic, we implemented a Security Operations Center, often known as a SOC. And this is really cool. So we now have a centralized hub, that's what the SOC is, and all of our big systems plug into that. And it has some AI and algorithm, and it monitors all those systems, and it looks to see if any of them have been penetrated and to see if there's anything bad that's trying to move between them, because once access is gained to your network, often they look to move on to other systems. So we have this core hub that's monitoring everything to ensure that it's secure, and it not only notifies us, and we're not only, our IT staff, the people watching it, but we also have a security company who watches it as well to look for those patterns, because they've got a lot of expertise in that field, and we're able to leverage that. And a couple years ago, we held a cybersecurity tabletop exercise. So we recently created a new cybersecurity incident response plan. So that's a document that would guide us through a cybersecurity incident should one occur here at the college. And we held a tabletop exercise where we brought in a large group of about 20 CAC staff to simulate what a cybersecurity incident would look like and how we would respond. So we were able to put that brand new document through its paces, as well as give our staff an opportunity to practice what we would have to do in an event like that. And we now require cybersecurity training for all of our staff on an annual basis. So this is mandatory, and it's very important. So we have a series of videos that they have to watch with some questions that they have to answer. And the reason it's important because this will continue to be any organization's largest vulnerability. We can set up all these fancy tools that will watch our network and will protect us from brute force attacks trying to come in from the outside. But if somebody's able to call or send a phishing email and trick somebody into giving away access into our network, that's a lot easier route, and that's typically the ones that these bad actors tend to pursue because they can gain access to the inside in a lot easier fashion. So this is an important piece for us, and we rolled that out for the first time last year, and we'll be doing it on an annual basis. And on top of that, last year, a lot of you may not know this, but we have started phishing campaigns where we actually pretend and we send out these emails and we track who clicks on them with the purpose of trying to identify people who might need additional training, right? So that we can all do our part to keep our systems as secure as possible. So did it for the first time last spring, and we're gonna continue to do this. Go ahead.
I just want to let you know that I've detected some of those things and reported them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's really helpful to us.
People do some weird things to us here.
They do. Yeah, so if anybody ever comes across those, you can forward them to spam@centralaz.edu, and we go in and block those. So for those people who do bite on those phishing campaigns, they'll be assigned additional training with levels that we're working to build right now so that we can ensure that we're holding their hand to get them up to speed and be able to pick out those identifying markers for those malicious email. All right, and this one is for the future, something that we're working on right now. We're building a brand new staff Wi-Fi network purely for staff to be able to connect their personal devices so that when you come on campus, your cell phone, if you have a personal tablet, all of those can connect automatically on a secure network for those personal devices. And what this does is it allows us to better protect our core business network, because right now you can connect those devices to our core Wi-Fi network where we have all of our systems. And your personal devices, we just don't have as great a control over with all the updates going out on those versus the CAC issued equipment that we're able to stay on top of. So there won't be any overall functionality loss to our staff, but it's a measure that we're taking that will allow us to better protect our assets on that core business network. Okay, so going forward, we're going to continue to improve. It's a quick changing landscape on the technology front. Those who are trying to perform these malicious activities are always coming up with new approaches. And so we're working to stay on top of those, especially by staying up on all the literature, the recommendations, and even the requirements that are coming out at the state and federal level. Recommendations from our auditors. They do a good job. We work with them annually going through our audit and learn what we need to improve on through that effort, as well as our cybersecurity insurance requirements. So any questions for me?
Say it again.
One question.
Go ahead.
Is it possible for some outsider to manipulate the program that you're using for security itself so that they can get access to information without hacking the system?
No, it's not. I mean, they're highly secure, and we only have a couple of individuals who even have access to them, and they even can watch themselves to see if they themselves, as a software application, are performing bad activities and moving across to other applications and trying to manipulate those systems. So good question, but we have multiple safeguards in place to be able to watch for that. Any other questions?
Apparently not. You did a good job of covering a lot of detail there, Cameron. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, and your team. This is fairly extensive and the normal course of business anymore for
Yeah.
everyone. Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. It has been an exciting IT world the last few years with everybody that's being hacked, and we have a great IT staff that looks into these things and takes these things seriously. And as Cameron mentioned, the auditors do a separate IT audit every year as well. So thank you to them for double-checking our work to make sure we're not missing anything. So the last two reports are the monthly budget report and the awarded bids over $20,000. The monthly budget is now August 22, 2 years into the new fiscal year. August 22 shows the district's fund operating expenditures at about 12.6% of the total budget, which is a slight decrease of about 2.5% from August of the previous year. That was at 15%. And the awarded bids, you have 13 that are included in your packet, all that are bids that have been awarded over $20,000. So I would be happy to answer any questions on either of the two reports.
Any questions? Seeing none? I think you're done.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chris. All right. Last item on the agenda, formal item, is the Arizona Strategic Vision Report. Dr. Elliott.
Thank you. I'm going to have some help with this report. Mary Kay, Dr. Gilliland, Dr. Cardenas are going to help, and we might call on Dustin as well. You have the whole report in your packet, and I think we have it ready to go up. We're going to probably touch on the highlight slides, so if you want to go to the podium, we can get to there. We didn't practice, if that's not obvious. So if you could go to the, this is a report that comes out every year. It is conducted by an outside evaluator for all the community colleges. So it is a comparative report, and it's based on the Arizona Community College strategic vision and strategic plan to grow access post-secondary credentials by 2030, which also align with Achieve 60. So all of these kind of things fit together. Some of the measures that you see in your board's outcome come directly from this report. So yes, let's just go to the next. Again, this is just, probably should have pulled some of these PDFs out, but I didn't. So this is the framework, as I mentioned, that supports the community college's strategic direction for 2030. If you'll go to the next slide, please. This, again, is just the metrics in the cohorts that kind of explain, because they're not all exactly alike, which would really be helpful, but that's how institutional research operates, I guess, is the cohort model, which I'm not sure always paints the true picture, but it's IPEDS as well, so we kind of follow those. Next slide.
And IPEDS is just.
Integrated Post-Secondary Education System. It is a national database that houses everybody's data. It's fun to get in there and play around in. And again, this slide really talks about the portrait of the effects of the pandemic on Arizona's community college students. If you didn't get a chance to read that, it's obvious that when we look at some of the data that we're going to look at today, that the pandemic had a profound effect, not only on Central Arizona College, but even across the whole state. The next slide. So this is a slide I really want to point out for us. It is our head count, our student enrollment. And if you can see that in 2011-12, we were at 14,000 students with 5,000 full-time student equivalents. And student head count has dropped, as well as full-time student equivalents. Now, why that's important, and it's really important for us to get we call it FTSE up, is because it directly impacts expenditure limitations. And as you can see from the audit presentation, we bring in more money than we can spend because of that 1980s legislation that limits what we're able to spend. But interestingly enough, this is one thing I'm really proud of for us as an institution, is that we serve the population we need to be serving, which is we're Hispanic, Latinx, 37%, Indigenous, 4%, and that puts us much higher than the national average, and in some cases, many of our peers in the state. So I don't know if Dr. Cardenas or Dr. Gilliland have anything they want to add.
Yeah, there was one thing that I wanted to add regarding the number of total enrollments, so the number of total credits that students had registered for, is I think Dr. Elliott, when she had first gotten here, did a lot of work in helping us to move many of our 4-credit classes into non-credit. And if you look at the fact that the full-time student equivalent declined at it's at a much steadier rate than the number of credits that were reduced. I think a lot of that plays into it is, we did a lot of work to intentionally ensure that students took the right courses, that didn't take too many credits that weren't necessary before they transferred and things like that. So although we do absolutely want to increase our enrollment, seeing that, I definitely can see that a lot of that work is what has led to some of this drop as well.
And just to update you on that, and that was a good point, is that we had many classes that would be considered lifelong learning, community ed, and we were running them and treating them like credit courses, which was a different cost structure as well. And for learners and doing hobbies, I didn't feel like it was ethical for us to make them take it as credit courses that led to no degree, because they're interested in line dancing and took it every semester. So I forgot about that. That's been so long ago. All right, we can go to the next one. These two are telling as well, and I think this really goes, the first one on the dual credit learners has significantly increased, and I really want to give kudos to Jenny and her team, and Hazel's here. I told her to come to the board meeting. Hazel Rossi, who is one of our recruiters, they have been working very, very hard with the area high schools to offer early college, dual enrollment, and in fact, I think Hazel told me today one school, she was told by one of our faculty members, no more, because we can't find adjuncts. So, that puts us incredibly high compared to our peers. And so I'm really proud of the team. And also adult basic ed, if you look, the pandemic did not really impact our ABE GED learners. So those are our most underserved people in our community are our high school students and ABE GED. So this was really a good slide to see based on access and who we serve, that the pandemic did not have the effect drastically on these populations. And then the enrollment of historically underserved populations. As you can see, we only really declined in Pell recipients. I'm not really sure what attributed to that other than maybe a decline in the enrollment. But even during the pandemic years, we continued to grow our underserved populations. And so I would say when it comes to access, that the college and our teams are doing exceptionally well as far as reaching those who are most in need in our communities. And I don't know if you guys want to add anything to that.
Yeah, the only one thing that I'll add connected to Pell is one of the things that we found out is during the pandemic, we had many more scholarships, and there was much more funding available to students that didn't require them to complete the FAFSA. So for instance, the money that was received through the federal government and things like that. So we also had switched during the pandemic to not charging for tuition in some cases. So all of that we think led to many of our students not feeling the same need to complete the FAFSA. We since have put a lot of focus back on, and with call campaigns and all types of different things to get students back into the habit of doing it. But we think that led to the large decrease.
And I might just point out, and then Dr. Gilliland, is that we serve more adult learners than the national average at Central Arizona College. So even though we've grown that dual enrollment, our significant population is what we consider adult learners.
I was actually going to say something similar, but I also wanted to add that when we look at our adult ed and our dual credit learners, that those are students who are positioned to come into additional CAC programming, so growing those populations is very positive.
Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. So again, this first metric, 6% of credit hours earned via alternative times and places. You can see the big increase. And obviously, that was the impact of the pandemic, that we are offering much more alternative learning times and places. And then the community college going rate. Unfortunately, it's obvious there that in Arizona, the U.S., and even at Central Arizona College, we were all impacted somewhat by the pandemic as far as college going rate. Those individuals, those learners from high school or choosing not to attend college. And obviously, I think that is a direct indicator of the pandemic. And I don't know if you guys have anything you want to add.
The only one thing is, because we had the positive impact with dual enrollment, the hope will be that when those students graduate, and the work that we're doing is to help them to then stay at CAC, which these numbers that we're looking at now wouldn't include students that are in high school and dual enrollment. So the fact that the dual enrollment numbers are increasing should have also a positive impact in future years on the college going rate increasing as well. So,
okay, we can go to the next slide. Cost of attendance, again, this is a board outcome to keep us at or below the Arizona average. And you can see that we have done, they don't have the community colleges in here, but we are below the average for all the community colleges. We set tuition at $50 a credit hour this year, $75 a credit hour next year. That still puts us below where we were pre-pandemic, which was $86 a credit hour. So again, we're very, and I always tell everyone, if we didn't have expenditure limitations, I'd put it at 0. But that's a legislative agenda, obviously. So I would say that we are extremely affordable compared to the cost of attendance for any of the universities, state universities. And the cost of attendance is a calculation, and Jenny can attest to this, and maybe there's a time to relook at it now that we live in where students can do hybrid, they can do online, they do face-to-face. factors in living expenses, food expenses, travel, all of those things, books.
Dr. Elliott, what is the average tuition rate in the university system?
Oh, I couldn't answer that. Well, I guess what we could see here, well, no, they're showing percentages. We're 24 to 26% lower, and we're at $6,000. So, who could do that math really fast? What would be 25, 26%? About 15,000. So, I mean, that's a rough guesstimate.
For students, for a full-time student, for a semester?
Yeah, these are based on full-time student.
For a semester or for a year?
For the year.
For the year. Or is it semester? Per year?
It's for the year, but that 24 to 26% is compared to the state median household income.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm sorry.
So the state is probably closer to 20 to 22,000 for cost of attendance for state universities. Closer to 25.
Yeah. I don't know, I pay a tuition bill, so it feels a lot higher to me.
It's a lot, yeah.
All right, we can go to the next slide. There are many slides in here, and I'm not going to go over all of them. I think maybe we'll just, on developmental math and developmental English success rates, the last, and it goes to 2019, so it's not showing the pandemic years, but we've made a lot of drastic changes to developmental English, reading, and math over the last few years. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on these slides, but one thing I do want to point out, as you can see, that we have the data disaggregated, and this information, we have people that are digging deeper into this to see what can we do to help the populations that are not performing as well in math, developmental math or developmental English. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide. And the same with English. Again, it kind of stops at 2019. We don't have pandemic data. We did not, a lot of students did not enroll in developmental ed courses when the pandemic hit because we were not able to give the AccuPlacer and the test scores. So again, we were still, we've stayed relatively the same over the course of years, as you can see in our success rates. It is something we're very interested in seeing improve. Go to the next slide. This is success after developmental math. Again, the data stops at 2015. We've made a lot of changes. So again, we're going to skip over that for a while. And maybe Mary Kay can talk a little bit more about the changes in developmental ed and English.
Yeah, I can just say a few things there. And actually, one of the interesting pieces of data, however, in the developmental math rate is that our Latinx students are doing better than even their white peers in the post-developmental ed college math classes. So it helps me feel that we're doing maybe something a little bit right in that we are reaching some of those underserved students that, had in not too many years past not done as well. So I think that's positive data. We have taken the opportunity, we were already embarking on a path of improving. Yes?
What are we doing to ensure that the students are successful after they develop this proficiency in math? It doesn't do them any good if they can't communicate with a potential employer.
Yeah, so that's a whole package, and we are looking at all of those pieces. Let me just describe what we're doing, and I think that would be fit in there. But for the most part, we had already been working on developmental education and trying to improve the outcomes for actually quite a long time. It included the guided pathways that you've heard about quite a lot, but even more, we were having conversations, and interestingly, I think we had made a decision to try to sunset our placement exams, which we felt were a barrier to students. And we made that decision before the pandemic hit, but just barely before. Our goal was a year or so out. And we found ourselves in a position where we were suddenly just not able to administer those tests, and so they were gone. So long story short, our faculty worked very hard, created some internal multiple measures to help students be placed, and have since gone through 2 more iterations of that. So what we have now are self-guided placements that students take, they self-assess, and working with advisors, they are able to more correctly place students, but help them move forward more quickly so that fewer of them are actually going through that DevEd, both math and English. And then the other piece is that both the English and reading or math areas have worked to consolidate their offerings so that instead of 2 or 3 levels of pre-college work, they've created courses that hit on those areas that are just really I would say the areas that are most difficult for students, the pain points in the learning process. And we don't have a lot of data yet, but we are finding that overall students are doing better moving into that college level, when we're looking at our current groups. But this is a smaller slice, this is a cohort that we're looking at, and also some data from a little bit past, so we're seeing some differences there. As far as communication, that is a part of what we do in the developmental ed process. So learning to communicate properly in both written and spoken form is a part of our gen ed, and we also build those courses into our we build those skills into our CTE classes. So we're very aware of the importance of communication, of presenting well to an employer, showing up on time, and these are things that we're incorporating into the learning as a holistic approach.
Thank you. So as you can see, this is pretty self-explanatory course success rate. Again, we have the disaggregated data that we're able to dig a little bit deeper and find out the why and what we can do for improvement. If we can go to the next slide, we're actually going to skip the STEM and go to, this is new information that's included in this report. And reports in the past did not provide us with as much disaggregated data that enables us to do deeper dives. But this is interesting. These are the disciplines at Central Arizona College with the highest rates of unsuccessful outcomes or withdrawals. And as we were just speaking about math, but it was interesting to see theater arts on here as well. But there's probably a reason for that.
It's one class.
Oh, it's one class, so that probably skews the information. But then again, we have sociology, business, computer science, Spanish history, journalism, and communication. Those are all larger areas, obviously, of learning. So we'll go to the next slide. Go ahead, and this is just the narrative, so go to the next slide. This is a metric on completion that is really focusing on learners who complete 42 credit hours within 2 years. I don't know why it's 42 and not 60, because most associate degrees are 60 hours, and you want students to be able to complete an associate's degree in 2 years. So we're trending pretty steady over the course of the years, and I don't know, Dr. Gilliland may have some insight into this.
I don't have insight into this specifically. And again, I was thrown also by the 42 credits. I thought we are not really measuring that full associate's degree, which is interesting, or the 60 credits that would transfer. But it does look like, we still have a lot of work to do in terms of our supporting students to get to that completion, and also, to transfer. But we've been actually pretty steady all the way through, and we need to move that needle a little bit.
Well, and a significant number, and I don't know the number off the top of my head, Dustin was, of our students are part-time and not full-time. So that impacts it, 80% of our students are part-time, working adults, or have other obligations. So again, having them be able to take 15 credits a semester may be not doable for all learners.
If I can just add to, yes, there are deeper conversations about this, and one is the mathematical modeling, because this is a slice, it's a small cohort, which is not representing a lot of our students. And also, there are students who take much longer than that time period, but they actually do get to completion. So, it's not measuring those who may take one class per semester, and we definitely have those students.
And Dr. Cardenas, you might want to touch on the changes you've made in advising moving to a coaching success model.
Yeah, so one of the one of the biggest changes that we've made is having different types of advisors. So when students come in and it's their first semester, they're trying to determine what it is that they want to do. They're meeting with an academic advisor who can help to get them on the right path. Whereas as they're further into their degree program or certificate program, they're working with success coaches and then with faculty and staff within the academic departments. And we found there have been some great models. We've had an advisor in STEM, for instance, that has been embedded in the science department, working in math and science, and has found a lot of success in really integrating the advising work into the academic department and being able to provide more in-depth advising and assistance for our students. So that's one of the big changes. And I think something that you mentioned, Dr. Elliott, and that Dustin just stated, with 80% of our students being part-time, it means that these two measures are really only looking at 20% of our student
Actually,
population.
this is full-time. The next slide's part-time.
Right, but
These are
that's what I
full-time.
mean. So this is only 20% of the total population are
Yes,
full-time.
but 37% of full-time learners.
Right.
Yeah.
So 37% of the 20.
Of the 20% is what I mean. It's just a small population
I see what you're saying,
overall
yeah.
that we're looking at, so, yeah.
Yeah, because the next
Not a
slide
good number either way.
is interesting as well. If you go to the next slide, this has to do with part-time learners. And interestingly enough, part-time learners were completing 24 credits within 2 years at a pretty decent rate prior to 2019. So,
It seems that the data shows that they were more impacted
Impacted,
potentially by COVID than our full-time students.
all right, let's go to the next slide. Again, this is fall to next term persistence rates. We retain our female learners at a higher rate than we do our male learners. And we've been fairly consistent with our retention from fall to next term. And that would be fall to spring. This is something that really impressed me about CAC when I was interviewing and looking at the institution. And then in our next slide, it's we drop a little bit when it's fall to fall. So we lose, they call it the summer seep or something of that nature. So really thinking about having conversations about 8-week classes, running them year round, maybe not looking at the summer as a time to break, because especially for our part-time students, if they aren't continuing learning or are full-time, then there's more of an opportunity for them to stop out. I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
What I'd like to add is really this even plays into, looking at the data and looking at that we're seeing consistently that our male students are not completing or persisting at the same rate as our female students. This goes into the work that we then do with student engagement and how do we engage male students in their college experience and help from a student services perspective to help them to increase those persistence and retention rates, along with the work that academics is doing with Learning Center and providing resources for students. So this helps us to really target student populations that need the most assistance and be intentional about how we're providing services.
Thank you. Okay, we can go to the
And if I can just add just to there, also, it looks like we were making some progress, and I'm attributing some of that to some of these measures we were putting into place just before the pandemic, and then we dropped back down pretty precipitously just right at that point. We do have better persistence among our Latinx students, which is good.
So this shows the degrees and certificates awarded and then workforce certificate recipients. So again, we had a stellar year in 2019, and then the pandemic obviously had somewhat of an impact on 20 and even into 2021 as far as the degrees and certificates awarded. I would have you take note that if you look at 2019, our number of certificates awarded started to increase actually in 2018, and that's when our career and technical education department started to develop stackable credentials where a learner can get, I think we had a welding student leave with like 5 or 6 certificates of proficiency before she got her associate's degree. So those stackable credentials allow our learners to have a credential in hand that has meaning in the workforce if they do have to step away for a while and they're employable. So, and I don't know if you want to add anything to that. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. This is the graduation completion, certification completion rates. We're making progress in that area. We dipped down and then we've got back up. I think a lot of that had to do with when I came, I think we found that the average learner at CAC was accumulating 114 credits. And so we made it a goal to really go with the guided pathways model where we remove all the opportunities for electives. And we still, anyway, do you guys have anything you want to add? I'm sorry.
I just wanted to comment that this is a 6-year measure, and so it goes all the way back to 2015 as our most recent piece of data. So, we don't really know what that looks like as we reached the pandemic. I'm guessing we continued to increase as we did in some of the other areas, and then leveled off or dropped. But, again, I think with all of these, we have a drop that is during that pandemic time, and I think we're going to work very hard to recoup and get back to where we were and then go forward. That's going to be our challenge.
Yeah. All right, we can go to the next. And we have more recent data that we do show when we come to the board report, and it goes beyond the 2015 because Dustin pulls leading measures and metrics for us. We can move on for the AJAC, and I think there's too much focus in this on transfer. I just want students to leave CAC with a certificate or an associate's degree, and so we've remained pretty steady with the AJAX awarded. And the one thing you have to understand about an AJAX certificate, while that's nice for transfer, it doesn't have any meaning in the workforce. And so we're starting those conversations here at the college about how do we redesign that so students aren't chasing the AJAC. Because if we have 373 students that receive the AJAC from us, and then they transfer to the university and they decide, oh, this isn't for me, they've wasted time and money on a credential that has no meaning. And again, that's my own pontification there, but it is a statewide core curriculum that if students take, they're guaranteed transfer at junior status. Don't know it always happens that easily, but I feel as a community college president, I have an obligation to ensure that students leave with some kind of credential in hand that has meaning in the workforce. Not everybody agrees with my opinion, and that's okay. I'm just going to state that's my opinion. And then the metrics 25 and 26 are transfers, percent of the AJAC and or degree students who actually do transfer. I would be interested in seeing the data, and I may ask for this, on the success rates of those that only transfer with the AJAC versus those that transfer with a degree in itself. So do you guys have?
If I can add to that, I think that, and I don't have the numbers in my head, but I think that although the ones who get the AJAC are more successful than those who go with a scattering of credits, the ones who have the associate's degree do much better.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And that's a national average. Was it like 71% of learners who have an associate's degree are successful at the university, more so than native students, and we call them native. It's those that start at the university as a true freshman. We can go to the next slide, and this is the university transfer rate. Our learners who at least get 12 hours and then transfer within 3 years. And again, we're a little bit lower than the statewide number of 27%, but again, this is not something that I'm particularly concerned with. And if we can go to the next one, another transfer, and you guys can look at that on your own, but again, I don't know, it's not really a metric that the board focuses on, so we'll move on to the next one. I think this gets to what Mr. Walker was asking as far as the successful outcomes, achieving the successful outcomes. And they're both of these demonstrate that to some degree. If you look at, it's really small and I don't have it up there. We have obviously of the degrees awarded and transfer without degree certificate, and you could see the success. And then those that are still enrolled. Again, this is a long-running cohort. We only have the 2015 data. It's a 6-year cohort, which is really doesn't always paint the most immediate picture for what we might want to know.
And this is one I do want to look into more. I believe that where the drop occurred, where we went from 82% down to 55%, and then we've gradually increased but are still in the 50s, would have been the time period that we switched student information systems, if that's accurate. And if you look at the highest number in 2011 is the students still enrolled after 6 years. I'm just wondering if that's when you see the most significant change.
You mean the new Nexus was in 2016?
Right, but we're looking at the cohort at 5 years later.
Oh, I
So
see.
that would have been 2017, which is when we switched over, right? So that could be maybe not the case. Dustin, you're smiling at me, which.
No, I think it is.
But I think that's something for us to look into. That's a significant drop for the first 6 years, and then the last 4 to be, that's a pretty big change, so. Maybe not.
Well, we'll definitely look into that. And if you go to the next one, and I think, again, this gets to what Mr. Walker was asking, is what percent earn a bachelor's degree within 4 years? And you can see a percentage is significantly high. We're similar to the statewide at 72%. This is why it's really important that we ensure that our learners leave us with an Associate of Arts, Associate of Science, Associate of Applied Science, because we know they will be successful in completing their bachelor's degree. I mean, that's one thing we do definitely know from the data, for instance. Is there anything? And then we can go to the next slide. And again, it's just looking again at bachelor's degrees within 4 years. And we'll go to the next slide. This is an interesting slide because it is projecting what is needed. And we obviously play a big role in that, of what will be needed as far as percent of Arizona working age population with a post-secondary credential. And you can see where Arizona is actually, and you can see where the United States is actually as well. So it's very important in coming years that more and more Arizonas are receiving some kind of post-secondary credential. We'll go to the next slide. This is enrollment in occupational courses. We dipped and stayed where we are. We're looking at adding some more CTE type programs, occupational programs to the college, because we know there's that need, and we'll get to that page here in a minute. If we go to the next one. I get asked a lot, how do you decide what new academic programs would be needed at Central Arizona College? And this report is what we use to decide. And it looks at the highest demand occupations count from the census, and from, I think it is actually from the state. It's the state, it's not just, it's Pinal County, okay. Oh yeah, it does say Pinal County. So, but less than a bachelor's degree. So as you can see, the check marks are by those that we already have, but there's plenty of opportunities for us to look at expanding programs to meet the need, and in several areas. For example, dental assistant, respiratory therapy, occupational therapy, that's a program we've talked about. So we have some great HVAC. We actually are working with Comfort Systems right now to develop a program in that area at SMC. And if you want to go to the next slide, sorry, I'm still recovering from being ill. This is where we do really well with our occupational learners earning a certificate degree or within 1 year of exit from the program. Obviously, we can do better, but we are working on building those stackable credentials so that if life happens, you have something in hand that means something. We'll go to the next one. There's a lot of information, and then we're done. So we're happy to take any questions you have. I know that was a lot of information in a report, but it really helps us as an institution be able to dig deeper and make intentional and specific improvements.
Any questions? That was a lot,
It was, sorry.
but very informative.
Thank
Very
you.
informative.
Thank you for helping Jenny and Mary Kay.
Great, thank you.
And
Thank you,
Dustin.
team. All right, well, the next item on the agenda is adjournment, so hearing nothing else going on, I will declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you to our guests for traveling down here as well.